money since the 90s. Ask you to install an extension when you're doing something completely unrelated.
Share screen.
Well, you develop something that has value, and someone pays you to bundle the extension that just steals their data. Remember the Google toolbar and every.
How do they get their money?
I was. Share screen.
Cool.
Okay. I'll see if I can find the real mic, but you are audible. You can be heard.
All right.
Sounds good.
I like how the word really.
Oh yeah, it's really nice to have to stand out.
All right. Okay. My so as I stated in my intro, I think WebAssembly
And size.
Game mode.
That works.
We can turn lights down. Yeah, that's all. Tell everyone good day.
Email to right.
I don't know how to do this. I give up. Oh, wait. See it now.
There you go. All right. Tell us your name again.
I called a panel, and I thought it was a panel.
I am Andrew. I am the front-end web developer, the duck of the group. Andrew's hotel is a little WebAssembly experiment that I wanted to do. This is built using Wasm Pack, so it's probably the shortcut way to do Wasm. And so I just wanted to try to do a complete WebAssembly project to demonstrate the power and capacity that WebAssembly has over JavaScript. So the way that this works with Wasm Pack, they actually have it coupled with the JavaScript bundler called Parcel. And then there's a plugin that says like, oh, hey, if this crate automatically reloads, then automatically put it back into the web app. The part that I would like to show is the Rust app run start Rust. So it's the Wasm Pack and Parcel working together. Builds fairly quick. It is an application to calculate how many prime numbers there are.
Ooh, that'll keep you warm at night.
Oh yeah, really cool.
Oh, not with an M1 though.
Oh, it's going really, yeah, it goes really fast. I can show the power. I'm pretty sure we can get it. Well, let me show. But first, the way that this works, so as a front-end web developer, it's really nice to have like automatic reloads. So I created somewhat of a crate library to integrate with the DOM. And the other thing that's really interesting is this is all done by Rust syntax and not JavaScript syntax. So once again, the guys that made Wasm Pack and like this whole Wasm engine just made all the connections underneath the hood. There was quite a few learning curves, but I eventually was able to figure it out. So here to show there's 3 exclamation points. If I just add in a bunch more, it'll automatically build and reload, and there's a lot more exclamation points. So once again, as a front-end web developer, that really helps. It's really great. But for the highlight of the application, so just to start out simple, I have 10 that is done in 0.16 milliseconds. Now 100, I did not put it in. So I'll just keep going through to see how fast it goes. So now 10,000. Oh, so it is calculating it all and putting it to the web page. Also displaying. So I actually have an equivalent JavaScript app to do this, and in JavaScript, this would be a real big hassle for it to handle. Like everything. So the prime function and just displaying it all on the web page. So there at 10.
So the browser display agent that holds the DOM does not have a guy that that's JavaScript allows them
These logs from us are going to be once finished calculating the results, not touching the DOM because it has to go out.
Okay. To go a bit more, so 100,000, 5 milliseconds at 100,000 calculation numbers. Yep. So go to 1 million, 25 milliseconds. And then to 10 million, 144 milliseconds.
So that means trading into the
Of U64, I haven't gotten that far yet. So, I feel like I want to show the web app too, but I don't have to. So the JavaScript equivalent, also the JavaScript equivalent. So the highest, it was 124 milliseconds. In the JavaScript app, it's going to get cross that much sooner. npm run start web app. Hello, prime numbers. Okay, 10. Okay. So already with 10 it is like way slower. So at 100, 0.44 milliseconds, 1,000, 0.69 milliseconds. So what I found is like below like 10,000. I actually did put this up in a graph, so I'll pull that up, comparison up in a moment. That this still wasn't too bad, but once it starts getting to 10,000, then it really starts to struggle. So 1 million, 121 milliseconds, now 10 million, about 2 seconds. So I did put this up in a graph. So those are the graph numbers that I ended up putting up. So yeah, WebAssembly is pretty powerful, is my lesson learned, and for anything above like 10,000, JavaScript is just going to struggle.
Cool.
And
Awesome. Anything else you want to show?
I do have 2 more projects, but I figured I could just share.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think would be like? Do you see like what the possibility of like what this could be developed into, like given more attention? Like don't get me wrong, this is impressive. I'm done wrestling right now, but it's like could this be used like somehow revolutionize
For sure. From my knowledge, what WebAssembly is really being used for is web animation with like the Unity engine. And I believe Adobe might use it with their Photoshop web app as well. So what was that? I did not.
So like
Oh yeah. Sure.
Doesn't matter what somebody does doesn't mean deploy my Blvd games as a web page. Embedded right there in the browser, and it actually runs. It's like, holy cow! It's not quite as efficient, so you have to be a little bit more careful. But it's amazing that it works at all. Much less that my gamepad input makes it to the game, and the sound and the graphics both make it back out. I mean,
imagine they don't take like the biggest cut in robots for this either.
it's probably not.
So there was actually one more thing that I missed. So there's the Node.js runtime for that's used by front-end web developers, and that's usually just a server runtime. But through the magic of WebAssembly, people have figured out how to run Node.js through what's called a web container in the browser.
Interesting.
Well, as Python, you can run last.
Oh yeah. So
Anything goes web, anything goes web.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
good old Jurassic Park.
All right. All right. Who'd like to be next?
I think Bash is worse than
But you know what's not so bad? The POSIX shell.
Yes, Windows Bash.
Well, I can do something. Where's
All right.
the?
It's right there. Just remember to share your screen.
I've worked like 2 days on my game project since I last showed it here, so I can show my 2 days of progress. Assuming I can get it running, let's go get that started. Okay, it's showing up. I'm gonna start my cargo run before I go get Jitsi going, because it's gonna have to compile. Okay. Wait,
There's also things like NetChat.
Jitsi meet
.jit.si slash, no, not jitsi.si, jit.si.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Excel
And then Command D.
and D. Bookmark it. Oh, I see. Folder. Sure.
Does anyone know what define uses?
Oh, there's also continuity. I forgot about continuity.
Yeah.
AI and
no, right now.
Super.
Need my face. Mine is share the screen.
Click join meeting first, or mute your speaker.
I'm looking for the mute, but it's hiding.
You have a touch bar?
Yeah,
Okay. Is it muted?
there we go. Muted it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good. All right,
Okay, you're sharing. Let me see. Are you sharing your screen?
Ah,
You are not sharing your screen.
sharing screen, sharing screen, sharing screen. I'm sure it's one of these buttons. That one. That one. Okay. And well, it's doing that. Well, somebody else was doing their thing, but forgot to during his, and then nobody else wanted to. Let's see if. Oh, I just upgraded Mac OS. I just reinstalled them before I came. I noticed. Like a half hour. It was really annoying. Stupid Intel laptops. Oh, we got it connected. With the controller connected. So that part's done. So now it's gonna wait. So my current game project is a little asteroid miner, and I'm on I did day 17 today. where I'm working on pixel destruction. I want to actually like visually decompose things, and I got it working. And so that's what I'm going to demonstrate is the first sort of mining, which is just a ship destroying pixels in an asteroid. So it's very prototyping. This thing is mining.
What's that?
What's that?
This is my 17th day that I've worked on it. So every day that I work on it, like more than 5 minutes, I count it as a day.
So that's 17 days of pixel destruction.
No. On the game project.
Okay.
2 days.
2 days on the
pixel
destruction.
The last couple of months ago, several months ago.
Yeah, that was like day 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said,
Like
I've been counting each day, but they don't come often. I took like all of December off. No. This is not the PvP game. That was a different game. That's the one. I'm sure I showed this like 3 months ago. Was it longer? 4 months ago. It's probably the last time we did a show until today. Sorry I didn't have this pre-compiled. I need to get it. Apple Silicon on the laptop. Gotta wait till December for my 3-year. You know how it goes. What that does. Oh yeah. Yeah, that was not fun. If I had, I wouldn't have this one, would I?
Also, that thing's not being a game. My 17
Your processor 17 inch?
No, I have 17
I could totally see Intel doing that though. The packaging for this processor is 17 inches. Alright, we're just about here. 3:35, we got to the actual game itself. This is yeah. Oh, dang it. What do I do wrong? What do I do wrong?
You use mallet.
Did I not commit something? Or is it just one of those every once in a while things are weird? I don't know. Okay, well, that was fun. Sorry, guys.
The best demos.
Typical demo. Well, I bet what I need to do is like a cargo clean.
Was the last time you ran it updated your machine?
What's that?
Was the last time you ran it updated your machine?
Yes.
That'll drive it. Might have probably been the symbols.
Oh, right.
I need to do cargo update probably.
It's probably
the lock file.
Yeah,
look at that.
And
Just like updated like a bajillion things.
Really?
That many of them?
The data science ecosystem is not actually full restaurant because it's that big.
Well, I mean, I'm just so far into the car. They're all
That's
That's what we do in
prototype in Python, get POC out, and then you move it over. Especially if you type Python. Yeah, it's great. If you type it, then you get really good hints. It's nice. I wish Python had typing back when I worked with it. You haven't used it since 3.6? What's that? You used it since 3.6? Pretty much. Yeah. 2017 it changed that. I started using Python in 2.3. You could print without using print. Yeah. You had to. I tried it, but it just sort of like felt weird. So I just couldn't really get into it. I'm like, it's distracting me. Like, knock it off.
Thank you.
It's like every time it popped something up, I had to read it and analyze it, say like, is that helpful or not? And like, sometimes it'd be helpful, but more often than not, and it's a lot of extra reading for. It's like, thank you.
So I've heard way too many people that are senior level, that are on the high train, and going to the board and say they're changing how they program. So they program in a way that it gets better hits rather than just better.
Really?
Yes.
No, I'm going really about this.
And then learn off of those bad programs.
All right, well, who else wants to do a show and tell? I'll see if I can get this working in the background, but.
I got something.
All right, go for it. Okay, Connor has a show and tell.
I got a Jitsi first.
What the heck is wrong with this thing? Let's remove cargo.lock and completely new target.
Holy cow.
Nuclear option. Rust Blvd, good measure. Upgrade. Oh, I'm still doing my Jitsi sharing. No, I gotta stop that. Giving up on the Jitsi sharing.
Why? Oh, you're Jitsi sharing.
He's Jitsi sharing.
For the records of the court, please state your name and business.
I am Connor Whitfelt. I am showing off my migration of a autonomous microservices framework into Rust. I don't know how many of you guys are doing back-end stuff, but microservices are those fun things that we like to use and totally screw up. And so I like to be very, very opinionated about how you implement microservices, specifically what's called event source microservices. And there's this really, really neat project out there called Eventide. It's not super well known, but it has something called MessageDB, and it's a Postgres database with one table with all of these messages that happen, and things are able to basically consume these messages, and then they can handle them, and then they transform an entity, so the business component, and then that entity can then be like further aggregated later. Yes.
You know Ethan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Ethan's the one that introduced me to this, actually. And so
the other person who knows this language.
yeah, no, it's like super niche. One of the reasons it's super niche is because it's implemented in Ruby, And it not only is it dirt slow, it's a little hard to follow. And also the guys that wrote it, they're super helpful, but if you like ask questions that are kind of like dumb, it's worse than Stack Overflow when you say something dumb. Like you will feel bad about your life and your decision to program.
So, other than slow Ruby and hostile, it's awesome. Like we love it.
So
Okay.
it's incredibly scalable when you have a large company. This is something that we're actually adopting at the place that I work, because when you need to have autonomous teams that are working off components and need to be able to share things and not break things, you want to adopt strategies that almost let something completely die for days and then come back and then pick up where it left off. So there's never any of these disconnects or network issues, and that you can kind of work and adopt stuff. I'm in DevOps at my job now, and so I'm frequently working with deployment related things and improving just developer interactions. And I wanted to take the principles that Eventide takes with how it does autonomous microservices and move it into Rust. And if you've ever done Ruby, a lot of those isms were, a lot of Rust was inspired by those kind of Ruby syntaxes. Yeah.
Do you work at Bricadian?
No, I work at LiveView. If anyone's ever heard of that. Yeah.
He left Bricadia, went to LiveView, did the same thing. Now he's at another company doing the
Yes,
same
he's
thing.
at Omni. Yeah, so anywhere he goes, there's a trail of Eventide. You'll see that. Because he actually has a book on CQRS, which is the type of microservices that this is. Eventide is one of the implementations. There's also something called Event Store DB, which does CQRS. It has its own quirks. It just kind of does the sourcing. It doesn't really have a lot of the other opinions. I'll kind of show you what that looks like and why I moved it over to Rust. But to kind of illustrate what this would look like, you've got messages, and messages are incredibly simple things. I should make this bigger. So this is the account component. So this is handling a bank account. And a withdrawal, I've got commands and events. Commands are things issued to this service, and then events are emitted by the service. So one of the commands that could be given is to open a new account. I want the account ID, customer ID, and like the time that it should be opened. And then after that's handled, it's then emitted this opened event that other services can consume so that they could react. Imagine you have an Elasticsearch database. You want to, whenever an account is opened, create a new document in there so that now you can search off of that. And now you're not baking that, Elasticsearch thing into whatever creates the account. It's something that's acting off this effect. So you create handlers, and these are very similar to like something you'd see in a web handler, in that when I handle an open, I take this message and I'm going to save the account ID, and then this is where I fetch the account entity. And there's only one entity per service. Entities have a few of these properties on them, like their ID, what their current balance is, as well as a couple other things I can use to check whether it's open and then perform operations on it. And so that's why when I have something like open, I'm doing a fetch, which will either see if the entity exists or return a new one if it doesn't, save it inside of what's called the entity store, which is a local thing. And then it will get the time. It will follow this opened event, which precedes this open event. And then it will grab the stream name, and this is what it uses to identify where to store it in the message store. And then it will write, after that open has been handled and it's been stored in the entity store, it'll then write it into the message store again. So something else can consume this opened event. And it's called an actuation. I'm going to throw out a lot of these terms that don't make a lot of sense until I move over into Rust land. So this is really neat and very flexible, but it's also monkey patch. And if you're not familiar with monkey patch, it's when the language lets you do whatever the heck you want. And, I could go behind the scenes here and say kernel dot, puts, and then now I've overwritten the thing that lets you write to the console, and you have no idea. So it's very painful to learn these things, and you really get no type hits. That's one of the things I really like about Rust is just when you have these types and these traits on your structs, then it's really good at hinting what comes next. So moving this over, this whole framework, starts to take form when we look at things like what the commands look like. So we've got this, where's my open struct with my UIDs, my time. It derives a message, and this ensures that it has things like the ID, which is keyed inside of the message store database. And then these are then handled inside of, and this is going to look like a really gross generic, and I'll explain why that's important. But I need to handle this open. And so this is very similar to the way it's done in Ruby. Intentionally, I've actually kind of gone far enough to try to make it look like the Ruby code so that when I bring it to the opinionated people of Vivint, they don't say it's, broken. But it has all of the same safety and hints and speed that I get out of Rust. And with the lifetimes of like messages, I can follow it from the time that the message is created, deserialized into an actual object, gone through the proper handlers, and then disposed of. So its memory footprint is incredibly small compared to Ruby, which just kind of holds on to it and eventually is like, oh, that should probably go away. And the entity that it operates on is in here inside of the account. And the big thing that Eventide is known for is how they handle testing, because we've all done mocks and all these hacks in order to do testing, but they're big into substitutes, and substitutes are what's used by default as the dependencies. It's kind of like weird dependency injection for testing. And until you put a what's called a useful object inside of these handlers, it uses a substitute object which does nothing. It just kind of emulates the actuations that you can perform, like being able to handle or the message writer. And so you can create tests without really thinking about, I need to set up these mocks and I need to not hit an actual database. I can just perform the same functions I would in a normal handler. I can perform this handle action, and then I can check to see whether or not it was written, because what this handler is doing is accepting a command, writing this message, and then I check to see whether or not that closed event was written. And then I'm able to use that, because the second I confirm that it was the last thing, because it's an any, you guys know what any is, I have to downcast it into a type. And then once I have that type, if it's something, the option is some, I can continue on, the test doesn't fail, and I can act on that. So what's cool about this is that I'm able to use types without having to like do all of these casts or these checks. It's just kind of passive. Like I want to check whether the last message was a closed event, and if it passed, then it knows this is a closed, and I can now use it as a closed for all these subsequent tests. And so the way I write a test and check all of these parts adds on to these further checks, because the compiler is smart enough to assume how data or how these types should be used. And I don't know, this is something that makes me excited about using Rust in such a way where you can take something that is so very not typed and then have it be typed without destroying its usefulness. Because I've redone this in Go, Kotlin, I can't remember what it's called right now. What's Phoenix written in? Elixir. Thank you. And each one of them has its own quirks, but Rust has been the closest without making you write more code. You can just focus on the business logic that's being implemented. And then now what I'm working on is just handling the consumers and things that are actually behind the scenes that handle message fetching, because it's a poll-based system, and then cleaning up how my macros. These are all done primarily through procedural macros, and if you've ever written those, they're kind of tricky at first, but they're a blast afterwards. So whenever you do something like derive a handler, this one is really messy with all these generics that allow you to do substitution at compile time. But if you inherit it, it gives you this nice handle macro in this specific file that lets you create a handler just by saying handle what message. And then you don't have to worry about introducing trait bounds again, just by having that one derive. And then you have helpers here, which are just saying it accepts messages, deposit, withdraw, because it can't, because there's no reflection. I have to tell it these are the kinds of messages it accepts, so it can create the enum behind the scenes.
So and Ruby are fairly compatible?
Yeah, to a degree. So more than you might think. If you get rid of a lot of the dynamicisms, because you can't like change things at runtime, but you can find other ways to do it. Like with my substitutes, one of the things I need to do is override this clock thing, which is what generates a time. And in order for this test to be good, I need it to tell me the same time for now all the time. And so I want it to tell me that now is, December 30th, 2019, every time I run a test. But that's done with this function, this now function. And the substitute actually lets me override that now function with this custom function there, this inline one, closure, thank you, that pulls from a control or an example data structure and return that now when all the subsequent things that use clock request now. So I know it's always consistent using my control variable. Now, this overriding of a function isn't something that you normally could get out of a static language. But when I go to how my clock substitute works, clock, yeah, my mod. So this one, it just stores these function pointers. And when I use the substitute, I get it. But when I'm using the production code and it compiles against the useful one, the effectful one, it doesn't use function pointers. So I don't have that inefficiency of doing a double call, because these essentially, when I call a function, then have to call another function, and so they're doing a double jump, and that's never super efficient. So I can emulate things like a Ruby behavior without then, when I create the production release of it, getting those negative downsides. Which is one of the reasons I have these super huge generics on things like my handlers. These are my objects, and these are just trait aliases that say that the clock thing needs to be able to do these three things. So any one of my substitutes or useful objects replacements need to also follow that behavior in order for them to be a useful substitute. So sorry, that was a lot, but that's what I've been doing for like the last 2 weeks. So it was a fun Christmas project to try to move that over. Cool.
Are you trying to follow the stream? Because you seem to be using a lot of the same constructs he's talking about in the stream. Who's stream? Ethan's.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, so me and Ethan are on the Discord with each other with a lot of the people that have worked with Eventide at the companies at now, as well as a couple other, like in California, that some of the people at LiveView have moved to. And we often brainstorm, and like we just had a meeting today every Thursday where we go over it and talk about proper implementations of it. And we take the Eventide docs and go over it and make sure that we're meeting that spec. Yeah.
You people are involved.
We are. Yeah.
Very much so. You had the traveling profit going paying adherence that follow around.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of a contagious thing, because when you work at enough companies that are kind of encumbered with technical debt because they create this monolithic system that just powers everything. At LiveView, it's especially fun because we have cameras running all the time. And we've had this system that we've developed for the last 10 years that can't ever go down. You know, when it's fun when you can, say we're going to have planned maintenance at 4 a.m. Well, when you have cameras that are always going, you can't have downtime. Upgrading a database is, the most stressful thing ever. But making any kind of code changes or modifying that, you come to a screeching halt. And so as we've implemented these kind of microservices, we don't really have to think twice about possibly breaking something. We're just able to add on new features, and code is a liability, but features are an asset. And so we're worrying less about liability and more about adding features without being afraid that we're going to hate ourselves later. And that kind of freedom is really, really comforting in a company. And being able to also do it in Rust where it's fast and safe is also fun. So it's like, enjoy what you do for a job. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish with this.
Curiosity, you planning to support backends that aren't a monolithic database?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the structure of it is there's the core crate, the EVT crate, and it has the primary traits that other crates can implement. It's kind of like if you ever used Axum. Axum provides core, and then you can have other crates that implement those backends so that you could use something like the event store DB, and even things like serialization. That's been a bit of a struggle, but I've never made it specific to JSON, even though Eventide is specific to JSON. It's just, you could use CBOR if whatever you're storing all of your events in supports a CBOR data type, and you can deserialize against that. Who's next?
Wants to be next?
Oh, did you get it working?
Thank you, Connor. Almost.
We can have repeat visitors too. Oh wait, that's not my job to say that. It's your job.
We can have repeat visitors and repeat presenters? Absolutely. Sure can. All right, Andrew, go again. Andrew's going to go again.
But almost working remote.
No, the people that like Scala like the long compile times because they get a break.
I always joke that with my wife, I watch some show while things are compiling, but they don't know Jenkins.
Oh, jeez.
Woo! Okay. Are you sharing now?
Yeah.
Oh, but you are not me. Wait. Oh, you're. Oh.
Hey, we use Haskell in production. It's a blast.
If you have an actual HDMI slot, plug it in.
That might work better.
I do have an actual. Thank goodness for the updated Mac stuff.
I'm glad they changed their mind.
Yes.
Come on. You can do it. You can do it, TV.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just do this real quick.
Do you have what's the thing called that makes the screen dark in the evening time? Do you have that thing turned on?
Night mode?
Night shift?
Night shift. Yes. Do you have night shift on? Because night shift actually modifies the recording and the HDMI, it doesn't modify the screen, it modifies the video signal.
Yeah.
You could snooze that.
Wait.
It was the little thing above. Shift. The turn on.
Just off.
That works.
Oh.
And do you have to hit apply?
It's already.
Oh, change it on the LGTV because I think it's for the display only.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, okay.
Color profile.
Oh,
night shift. It has the night shift option on the bottom. On the bottom. There you go. Night shift. It's off.
It's off.
why is it still?
Your brightness.
Go back to the LGTV and you're on built-in. There you go. Where is the brightness? It doesn't have a brightness.
Oh well.
It was fun though.
Well, with night shift off, it'll record properly regardless of what it does. Yeah. Now when I look at the recording on my screen, the recording looks
Nicer.
yes.
I did turn the night shift off.
Yeah, yeah. So now recording it looks decent. Whereas before it looked like muddy water. No, it's streaming live. So yeah, the streams where there's actually a presenter presenting on a specific topic typically do better, and we have with those we'll go in and cut out some of the lead in, lead out.
Okay.
Just it's because it's quick.
So once again, I've done several tiny little projects. This is another project I had. The reasoning behind this project was because I was on an anti-Google spree to make my to make my own I want to manage my own photos in my own file system. And so granted, Google Photos is a really, really, really good product, but I was like, no, data privacy, whatnot. And so I created this. I call it Media Organizer. It is kind of boring, sorry.
Yeah, but you can understand what it is.
It's fairly straightforward. Yeah, so I had this to sort any photos and videos by their creation date. It uses the EXIF data from the photos, and it uses the FFmpeg data, or the data that FFmpeg gets.
So when you say it organizes it, does it do it on your disk, or is this like
on the disk?
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to demonstrate what this does first. I have over here the test folder. Oh, and this is kind of my pride and joy of a Rust project, because I have it released to crates, and it is an active crate, and there are some downloads. It's not too much, but some. So the way to use this, it's been a while since I've actually dipped a toe in this, and I do have documentation for myself. So, if I do not have it as a binary, the way to run it through cargo would be root cargo run, then pass in a flag. The target is going to be the test folder, and I just want to output it to a sorted folder.
So does it copy and rename the files into a new structure?
So with the default options, it's going to move the files. I believe I do have an option though to copy the files. Yeah. So I do have that option in there as well. So here in the test folder, this JPEG and this test video are going to magically move once I hit enter. And they moved. And so now this one of Vasa Sunset was taken in February 1st, 2020. And then a video of some bears at the zoo is also the accurate date. So with all the photos that I had, I was like, hey, I'm going to use this. And it actually worked really well, to my surprise.
Cool.
I guess just a brief overview over the code. I'm using clap for command line arguments. I do have a lib where I'm using environment files and media info. It's been a while since I've poked around. It's been media info. So this is like read audio creation, so I do have additional ideas to implement more, so I wanted to see if I could find the creation date of audio files. I haven't figured that out yet. Granted, I've de-emphasized, deprioritized this personal project.
You mean separate from like the file creation time?
Yeah, because the file creation time.
On whether or not it was packaged in something like MP3 that has metadata at the end of it.
Yeah, that's what I've typically found is the metadata, but like versus the file creation time, like that's always going to change when like it's edited.
Every flat backup software is going to do stuff to it.
Yeah, which is also why the photo creation date and the video creation date have been more reliable too, because they actually have that hard, like firmly said. It's a real.
So some of those fictitious crates that you come to the meetup and tell people about.
Oh yeah, and so the clap has been really helpful for command line. Like, right, I highly recommend for a command line if nobody knows about it. The code is just simple. Just read file paths, go through the tree, dish it out, use globs on results and options. This.
Do you support Windows?
Yes. Because I believe so. Because
based on the fact that you got hard-coded slashes in there, I'm guessing
Oh, good point.
Slashes work on Windows now.
It's gonna be backwards.
No. Slashes work on Windows 10.
All those people on Windows XP. All the ATMs.
You're not gonna run this on your Xbox, bro.
So, I think the last thing that I did to this, as I was learning, this was kind of my learning project. The last thing I did to it was like the let ifs and the match statements, and so it was kind of interesting. That's like the way Rust does error handling. So it's not like the try catch. It's just, hey, just throw an option or throw a result, and I actually kind of like that a bunch.
That's how Go does it, right? And that's so tasty. If they're from there.
So, yeah, that's my project.
All right, Andrew. Thank you again. All right. And wait for it. And there we go. Okay, so here's my show and tell. This is my little ship. See?
That's not what you're sharing.
I got to share on Jitsi thingy. Okay.
Oh, Andrew, will you turn off the screen share?
Yeah. See. Join meeting. Share the screen. Share it, I say. All right. Now is it showing up?
No.
What?
Yes.
Okay. Wow, that's really colorful. Like very saturated. No, it's an asteroid.
That's a heart. That's a heart.
Well, that's what asteroids do. They spin.
It's a kidney that's been shot.
Okay. Well, we're gonna go mine it. So.
Oh, I was expecting to put it made a hole. I'm so confused. That really hurt.
Destroyed some pixels. Yeah, I missed a few because it's moving.
Because the asteroid's moving?
Yeah, the asteroid's moving, and I'm only destroying one little line of pixels right in the front of the ship. But hey, I just barely figured out how to do it, so you know. This is Bevy just running natively, but I can run this in a. I could compile this to WebAssembly and run it in the browser. It uses WebGL. Yes. It works in Chrome. Yeah, you turn on the WASM.
The WASM WebGL create implementation of its
How did some of those pixels get left over?
Because the ship is moving and the asteroid's moving at the same time, and I'm only doing. I've set these little points, these literally a point at the front of the ship, and so it's just sampling every frame, and any pixels that intersect it, it's removing.
So if you move faster,
If it moves too fast, it'll just skip them. So, you know, like, I got a lot of work to do, but I want to make it so you can actually mine the asteroid, and I want to, like, as you mine it, to, like, get stuff. And I have to figure out how does this interact with the collision system? Because right now I just turned off all the colliders because I can't really go in it if there's a collider preventing me from going in it. So I have to figure out, do I need to retessellate the colliders constantly, or like fudge it somehow? I don't know.
Retessellate is the coolest phrase I've heard.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, tessellate, make something into triangles.
By the way, Stardew Valley is 33% off today.
Oh.
What is?
Stardew Valley.
Do you know if Bevy does anything with voxels?
That's
Like your
what
GD
you're-
Box 2D?
It doesn't have voxels built in. You could do something with them. You'd have to make your own mesh, your own 3D object, and handle the voxels yourself.
Okay.
That'd be tricky.
Right.
You're allowed.
This is Stardew Valley space, right?
Well, I want to have some Stardew Valley-esque
Stuff.
Okay, so it is relevant that it's 30
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah,
I
it's
just
relevant.
validated you. What do you want, AJ?
More validation. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, brutal people.
Big drop. That was beautiful. Never comes in.
All right. Any other show and tells?
Management has spoken.
Okay, then the last 24 minutes is we're just gonna talk about Rust and stuff. So that's the end of our like fancy shareable stuff. So there's a lot of like very Rust beginners here. Would you folks be interested in us hosting a session where it's like, okay, we'll do some crash coursey stuff, like some intro, let's get going with Rust, or would that not be interesting, or
I would be down.
Go over some chapters in the book or something. The book.
Why the borrow checker is actually your friend and why it's not me. Yes.
What online tutorial would you recommend for Rust?
what?
What online tutorial would you recommend?
You can I can post a free link to my Udemy course if you'd like. Got Udemy crash course. I share it every couple months.
The book is really good if you're okay with walls of text.
Yeah.
If you need someone to tell it to you, it's hard. But
Yeah.
Did it sound audible?
oh, that would be great.
How would the code?
It wouldn't work. No.
Like the plain text part might work, but the
You
code
need to
snippet?
speak it in analogies.
Speak it in analogy. I like it.
I was like, first off, just remember that ChatGPT is trained to fake its way. Faking it, but just remember it's always faking. Isn't that what all of us do? It's kind of like a buzzword generator, but it looks like code. It's really fun to ask ChatGPT a question with made up combined words that are real, but made up combined. So I asked them how to use I asked it to explain defragmentation harmonics and music notation or something. And did it find the related things and sort of piece it together for you? And it said something like, defragmentation is not used for music notation, but the harmonics are created by the spindle head moving and I said monotonic harmonics. I said monotonic harmonic defragmenting was what I asked to describe, and it came up with 3 paragraphs describing monotonic harmonic. That's awesome. Defragmentation. My favorite is when I asked it to generate code, and it's like almost correct. So I'm like, okay, so look, you did this wrong, so fix it. And it's like, okay, I fixed it. And no, you didn't. It just made it worse. So like, it knows what it's supposed to say, and it thinks it kind of knows what it's supposed to write for the code, and so it's just like, yeah, sure, that's gotta be good enough.
That's why people are like rightly worried, because that's the vast majority of what people do in the office.
Have you seen u.com? You go to u.com? Somebody share it. I don't think I'm on the screen.
How to learn Rust, and it's telling me.
Let me see. Can we go here? Yeah, share. Do screen share. Screen share on or don't, whatever.
Sorry.
People do.
Where is this chat GPT thing? I've seen so much stuff about it. Where do you go to? OpenAI dot.
Just do research.
Wait, he said u.com.
Try u.com. It's an easier interface.
Is it U as in the letter U?
Y-O-U.
Y-O-U. U.com?
No.
If you don't already have it signed up, you have to sign up. U.com will do it.
But it did.
The art.
You don't have to stack
The
on
second first thing.
Right.
I've
seen like.
No.
I gotta make an account.
Again, just go to u.com.
You don't have to give an account.
U.com?
Yes.
The letter U.
There it is.
Wow.
It's ChatGPT under the hood, so you can
So
just start.
go underneath
doing stuff.
introducing new chat, talk to it here.
Oh, or you can just type it.
Yeah, and then ask it a question. How do
Right
I
here?
learn Rust?
All right.
Do you get Rustlings or something? I don't know. Let's see what's up.
You get rustling, like in the leaves.
And then grow out your feet. Have you seen that show?
I don't. You're saying words to me that. Like, that sounds like
Monotonic
harmonic.
hands.
Tell me nonsense over here, Casey. Sorry.
Oh, is he telling you about the monotonic
Well, he was just spouting off random words. Same thing. He's the chat.
Oh, yeah, background particle fluorescence.
It's never stuff like they go together.
Can you zoom in?
Oh yeah.
What?
Can you give it
Zoom in?
in big?
Zoom in and hand?
In big. Have you never heard that? No, but I love it.
Oh yeah, enhance is totally a thing now too.
Yeah.
Uncrop, enhance, zoom in.
It's pretty awesome.
Actually, I've seen that AI built like.
There's like several of them now. That
Like it reconstructs your whole head by only seeing like a quarter of your face. And it's like, it's like, yeah, we can build up stuff with the best of them. It's exactly what else now.
Is that
How much?
Full human, it's been.
How about ask how much unobtainium is on the planet Pandora?
We generated a fake image just like you, so.
That's why deepfakes are terrifying.
Enough
Stuff like
death to
that.
make a local population.
It's still similar to after something.
limited supply?
Not only do we plant evidence in your car, but now we're planting digital evidence at the house. You had time.
Well, could we get the Kimmel structures?
DJ happy.
I know it's
Wow. Fancy.
Ask is cool AJ86 happy?
Actually, put the ass symbol too.
No ad symbol.
Were you born in 1986?
This should I mean. All right.
Apparently you're not.
Ask what do you know about cool AJ86? It's got to know something. Google used to spell check.
I
or
love
spell
how
check.
you're like secondhand going through this incredibly personal
Oh my
video. You're on Twitch apparently.
Wow,
They mainly stream gameplay. Oh, is that true?
No,
Apparently they have a strong following.
This is not true?
it's none of this.
Oh, I bought it. Planet Synchro, yeah.
Yeah.
It's on the internet. Must be true.
Like it's speaking with authority here. It's like, no, I know. I've done the analysis. I've looked at the screen.
Exactly. You have to remember that ChatGPT is always faking it.
Yeah. So much
It's
data.
very
That's
it's
basically
faking
all
it.
machine learning.
It's faking
It's
it
all
all the
faking.
time.
Well, it's statistical analysis. So it looks up cool AJ86. What it has in its database, for whatever reason, is Twitch. I'm surprised it's not YouTube or one of the other platforms first. And then it's saying, okay, what is Twitch known for? And then primarily people watch horror games on Twitch, apparently, which makes sense because the two most popular movie categories are prawn and horror.
Survival games and horror games are very.
Yeah.
They didn't mention the other one on there.
It's very good sense.
You stream?
You'll have to tune in to find out, Todd.
What? How do we ask it? Generate, program, show.
What do you want it to do?
Make a program. Make a function.
Right. It's called right. Yeah.
This is as well?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a bunch of different options on the left.
That generates prime numbers.
Sure, it said that it was changing.
Oh.
I find it interesting that you're talking about it faking it, but I also.
It'll probably do that pretty
It's
well.
also really kind of important to understand that
function.
it functions on a very
it?
similar layer
It's
or
where I
similar
got
way
it.
that our brains do.
That's probably
Our
up there
brains
a
are
whole
thinking
lot. How about right?
Most of
Yeah,
the stuff we do.
any type of interview question you ask it, it'll know the answer.
You have been trained to recognize whether your past experiences should influence what you're saying or not.
Yeah.
Right. So you're able to say, like, when I say, what was the I don't know, the results of your last medical test or whatever. You're able to say things like, well, I actually haven't done one of those, or
Yeah. See it run.
If
you did, like, bootstrap a Beppy physics plugin.
paper, and it's just going to try to
What's
do
that?
something.
Bootstrap
its
a
own past
Bevy
experience
physics
and training
plugin
of what it should say
in
based on
Rust.
the actual event.
Yeah, there's only the now.
Right, so for it, it's always just like, I'm just gonna wing what I should be saying right now based on everything that's going on, and it has no, like, you know.
There probably is a Bevy physics one, but that's not what you want to use when you use radio.
Whether what it's
They
saying
provide
needs to be
the,
said, whether-
Which
what-
people are
provide an
mistaken on, because they'll have like
implementation
long chats
in
where
Rust.
they'll reference things back before, but it's not actually like intelligent enough to know, like you referenced this before, it's all just fresh.
I don't think that's true.
Well, that's terrible.
There are people who claim that they've traded with like journal entries over years.
It
How
doesn't
does it
necessarily
sound?
know, like, how it's supposed to do it. And it doesn't know how to say, like, I can't find what you told me about. It's just always trained to know the answers.
Yeah, it can only
It's
adjust
never
the weights
trained to know.
of you've mentioned this 3 times over here, so that has a higher weight of something I'm going to regurgitate back at you now.
Like, they don't.
Bias.
So does it bias it for everyone or just you?
So, yeah.
That's
So could
pretty.
you
Tell me.
No.
repeatedly ask it the same thing?
So this is
So
learning
that
from everybody.
everybody's data gets effed up?
So ChatGPT is actually not being trained on any of this.
Okay.
This is all just a pre-trained model that's just being asked.
So I may have misspoken.
But that-
is not ChatGPT.
It's given its
Analysis.
sort of history as context. So it's able to reference the recent things that it has said. It's written.
Well, I gave it a binary packet, and I said, this is the encoding that's used for this, decode it line by line. And it did some weird things. For example,
Look at that.
it was
It's gonna create a
hexadecimal, and
velocity
one of the
plugin
groups was an
for
odd
2D,
number.
and then it's going to create
And then
a
it would
physics
color it. And then
system.
at the end, it just kind of gave up and said, and the rest of the data looks like this.
Yeah, that's more interesting.
Then later on,
You
I
can
asked it another question, and then
Wow,
it
they
gave
got the
me
app
back
right
the
there.
same block that I had given it before, and actually did a better job of describing it, except that it described a generic, like if you went onto a Wikipedia page, or not a Wikipedia page, but if you went on the documentation
Oh, I have
pages
to
and looked at the
create a
description, a
account.
breakdown of the description of one of the
Because it
canonical
keeps track
examples,
of your
it showed my
entry
data,
because it's a
broke it
chat-based
down
one, so it uses
more
context
correctly,
as it.
but then gave the description of the generic data. So
because
where
it's
my
about
value
leading
was
up to the
was
question, then also
67,
get a more
it gave
accurate
back the value
Really?
42, even though it correctly identified the hexadecimal value that was 67.
Right, and so what that's telling me is that it didn't train it on enough of that sort of data for it to.
Hope it doesn't time
learn
out. Sometimes it will when it's
the
doing these
hexadecimal
long form
values
ones.
and the words that it was saying later on.
Why is it?
And so it's kind of getting the vague idea that you.
But it didn't-
But it doesn't.
I haven't got a solid answer if it's because it's
Yes.
actually like actively computing or if it wants to seem realistic
But it-
by typing it out.
It was weird because it
That's
gave back
syntax
the
highlighted.
exact hexadecimal block that I gave it,
If it knows the language,
rather
it'll
than the
have
one
more
that was on the page it
highlighted.
came from.
It's a
That's
transformer
fancy.
architecture, which means it's
It's
given
like
all the
related
context.
role wise or
So,
whatever.
not,
And it's able to
It's not
reference that
particularly.
and
Yeah, that's basically
So,
the
yeah, it can
physics
easily
thing
cross the
reskinned
line.
the different function names, but
yeah. So sometimes instead, what I like to do is I search up like
Eliza, the therapist?
like that. And it's
I've-
just, like
I've seen
copy
her.
the page.
They do write a fair bit of.
Good.
You can then just drop it
So
in
you've
like that.
experienced
It'll
this,
give you
like,
a
it
summary.
references.
You know, thanks for providing me more because it
Yeah,
limited
she asked me
knowledge
about
from any
my
group.
childhood and how I felt about my mother and why that was important to me,
Okay.
Huh.
How do I?
Yeah, I don't know.
and asked me why I was crying and why that was important.
Where you cried?
Creating simulation of physical behavior.
Oh, man. Ah, that's good times.
Now everybody has Eliza installed, right?
remember to
Everybody-
keep the
everybody has a Mac, has a
thermodynamics in
That's
there.
very important. If you don't know how hot your voxel is,
Eliza is a program from, I think, the 60s or 50s.
Eliza is the manifestation of Emacs.
It was
Who
literally,
wants to use Emacs?
Eliza, you should ask Eliza about
it
it.
was literally designed to pass the Turing test of can a computer
I got others that are nicer. Like it's really good with the clarity.
fake another human being into believing that it is another human being and he was just
Or
like a virtual
converting.
therapist.
That's
and
a
again,
really fun one if
it's
you've
in the
ever-
60s, running on like
like,
single
convert from this language to that.
single digit
Yeah.
hertz machine,
It's
Really?
really
and you would
good.
have like a dialogue, just in
Fascinating.
text back and forth. And
So
it
weird.
wasn't
Works at all.
anywhere near sophisticated shit. I don't want to like compare the two.
So,
It's just prompting
this
based
way-
on like the last couple prompts you gave it. It'll like pull things out. Yeah, it's like a machine and Markov. Yeah. But anyway, it's in the therapist and it's like, interesting. Say more about that. It's just like kind of generic, but it's kind of like
And then it
driving you
depends,
through
like,
this like
sometimes
deep
people,
machine
you know,
of
do the-
Oh, actually, it's code.
Yeah.
Because a therapist is a person who doesn't understand what people are telling them.
Yeah.
But some things, like, it's not smart enough to know that that's not a valid character for some reason.
Never mention your mother, because then the whole conversation.
And people, students mostly, were completely like baffled by like, who am I talking to? And like, you're not talking to anyone. And it's like, I feel this real connection.
Kind of memorizing it. I've done some stuff where I'll either do it like in
It was
Python,
very popular
or I'll
back
just
in
like
our
create some
days,
really
like,
inefficient
Python
thing,
was
give it to it, and I say, I know that it has this problem. How would you optimize it? It will go through and actually say, you know, you could do this, or you know, your lifetime is screwed up here. And you're doing a copy, so you should not do that.
Explicit correct.
Involved.
Yeah.
Will not be able to.
May I suggest gathering ideas from speakers and
Yeah.
presenters?
Yeah.
What's, we've got one on the 26th scheduled, right?
I think we do. Is it you?
I don't remember. I'm only taking this because you're dropping it and then nobody else stepped up.
Well,
I didn't know where you wanted to go.
Are either of you with Vivint?
Well, you talked about.
No?
So you run some other ones?
So I also run Utah Stack.js, which
Just start that one?
so I did, but it comes from the long history of Utah Node.js, of Utah.js. So I started Utah.js, and then it got too weird because front end and boot camps, and so then I switched over to Utah Node.js, which was started by Michael Jackson.
Oh, it's a different Michael Jackson.
No, it's the same one you're thinking about, yeah.
Okay.
There's a few Michael Jacksons that are well known in the programming community.
That's nice. Yes. I don't know any of the programming community.
That's teasing, but there are a few that are well known in the programming community. Anyway, and so I took that over, and then Corona happened, and then we moved from Salt Lake down here, and because we had thousands of inactive members and boot camps generate all of this, people sign up but don't stay, and the meetup just started dwindling, and I wanted to build back up. Like, Rust is growing,
No, this is the feature.
but Utah Node was just not picking back up its steam. It was a huge meetup, and then Corona hit, and just it was utterly destroyed. Yeah, and it just hasn't really picked back up the pace. And so I thought, well, how about we just can it, start it from scratch, and make people pay $1 a month to be part of it. And then that would reboot it, bring in high quality people, raise the value, and
All right, who's Lane?
So that's-
Lane here? I don't see Lane.
Lane is Lane from boot.dev.
So Lane is presenting on January 26th at our next meetup. So today's our December meetup, isn't it?
Yes, today is technically our December meetup.
It's December somewhere.
And then Mars maybe. and then 26th is the January meetup because our meetups were moved to 4th Thursdays. But I don't like 4th Thursdays, so I vote that we move it back to 2nd Thursdays.
Okay,
What do people think about that?
but not next week.
Not in January, in February. Let's go look and see what the 2nd Thursday is, because if it's Valentine's Day, no one's gonna be here. Month. February 2nd Thursday is the 9th. Totally a safe day. Anyone opposed?
March is the 9th as well.
All right. So from February on, I'm gonna put these on the 9th. Can I get like admin on the meetup?
Yes, I will make you co-organizer.
That works.
We're gonna have to do some fiddly diddly.
Yeah, I don't have to do it.
Actually, so is everybody okay? Do we want to do? I want to get the meetup costs covered by the meetup. So two options are $10 a year with 60 days free. So you could attend 2 meetups in a row, or I mean, technically you could attend them because it's not going to count towards here. It's just going to count towards getting notifications. Or $1. Well, it has to be a minimum of $2 a month.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about getting the meetup costs covered on meetup.com because I have to change. I've been grandfathered into their old plan, but I'm restructuring some things, and so it's going to
start costing money where it didn't before.
Well, it's already been costing money because I didn't get grandfathered into that. So I've already been in one tier and they're going up another tier. And if I move
as long as I'm running it, I'll just pay for it.
Okay, all right.
Is this the kind of thing that we could build in a serverless Rust fashion and host ourselves?
Meetup.com? I'm not going to work on a
I'm
web
not
app.
talking about like competing with them. I'm like, for this meetup, run a simple page that people could use for notifications that just uses AWS Lambda API.
There's a lot because you have to have a login. Let's say you use GitHub, that would work. That's not too much work. Then you have to have some sort of email service, and that's going to cost money.
Hey, if you want to make something, as soon as it's more convenient than meetup.com, we'll switch over.
I know a person here who makes a good service for like hosting media in a product.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they could also make one for
What?
and alternatives?
Wait, hold on. What was your question?
I don't understand the question.
I think he's just pulling a ChatGPT on you.
Oh, okay.
We will host it at meetup.utah.rs.
Yeah, it would be cool to have the Jitsi be a static link from the utah.rs.
Utah.rs. Is that our github.io page?
Yeah, I think it lists our last meetup as 3 years ago or something.
19.
I think you made it so that it pulled from Meetup, right?
Keeping this page up to date.
That's awesome.
I forgot we had that at all. I mean, the last time I thought was probably 2018.
Yeah. Oh yeah, upcoming meetups.
Dun, dun, dun. Hey,
It's
Step
good.
Family Meetups is correct. How'd that work?
Huh?
No, it's not.
It's still on the old schedule, second Thursday of the month.
Yeah. Well, it will be correct come February. Fascinating.
All right.
RSVP, does that go over to the meetup? It does. Oh, fancy. Fancy schmancy.
Well, I will go ahead and to anybody that's online, I'm going to end the stream. We're just chit chatting and organizing now. So adios.